Salam, Shanti, I want to bring you in now because we did have Donald Trump there who spoke about that nuclear deal which the United States walked away from in 2018. And he says the United States is going to call on the European allies as well as China and Russia to break away from this nuclear agreement, which was already hanging by a thread.
The nuclear deal started falling apart when the U.S. administration walked away from that multilateral accord in May 2018, despite Tehran's full compliance. Delano, we often say this. It was the international body, the IAEA, that not once, not twice, but 15 times confirmed that Iran was indeed sticking to its end of the bargain. Nonetheless, Donald Trump walked away from what he referred to as, I think it was the word silly he used there previously, a bad agreement, which was actually a win-win situation. Tehran scaling back its nuclear program in return for sanctions relief. He tore up that deal against the advice of many of his close advisors and launched what he referred to, what the U.S. administration referred to as a maximum pressure campaign. Of course, the European powers, which have been mentioned in that address, despite making very bold statements, did very little to salvage the JCPOA, the nuclear accord. Now, Trump said earlier that he wants them to walk away from the remnants of that agreement. But frankly, the Europeans have, up until this point, from the perspective of the Iranians, failed. They didn't even manage to muster up an SPV, a mechanism that even enables for humanitarian trade. We're talking about food. We're talking about medicine. We're talking about the very basics. So a year on, Iran decided to scale back its commitments to the JCPOA. Doesn't mean abandoning it, doesn't mean completely walking away from it. What it did was it lift the restrictions on the number of centrifuges that it has. What it's continuing to do, and this again, Delano, falls under the JCPOA umbrella, is to allow for inspectors, we're talking about those international, the IA inspectors, to continue visiting its sites and providing reports. Now, earlier, I spoke to a source very close to the Iranian leadership who told me that if Iran is pushed to that point once again, whether it's with strikes on more officials, whether it's with more sanctions, which we're about to see now, is it will, again, in a perhaps more gradual step, which we've been seeing up until this point, step by step, it will even stop allowing for those inspectors to enter the country. So that's something to keep a very close eye on to see how the Iranians will retaliate to these sanctions coming up. Now, big question is, what will these sanctions look like? I don't think at this stage Trump knows himself, but what I can see is more individuals, more officials in Iran being designated and being sanctioned, facing these punitive measures, as we've seen previously with many officials, Qasem Soleimani, of course, being one of them who was assassinated by the Americans last week.
Indeed, last Friday. And I'd like to go across to France 24's Ketevan Gorjestani standing